Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in this video, which is now part 3, we're going to continue with the repairs to the bodywork on the list a list of jobs on this car that just keeps on growing. So that's what we're going to do. Let's crack on. Now, this headlight is definitely past its best. We've had a go at buffing it up, but ultimately it's got a huge, great crack in it. This car's booked in for an MOT this week. It's letting water in. There's no way I think it's going to pass an MOT with that headlight. So I do have a new one, but unfortunately that means I have to take the bumper off the car. Now, apparently this is quite straightforward, so I'm going to give it a go. I'm also going to just patch up some of these marks on the bumper as well whilst I'm at it. So I've got some red paint, and it's going to be much easier to do that when I've actually got the bumper off the car. So I'll just show you what I'm going to do to remove that bumper. So on here, there are several, I think 8mm bolts, just one here, and one here. And then underneath the wheel arch, you can see already this is not attached very well, so it needs to be reattached. There are some little torque screws in there. If I just take the camera off this, I can show you these little things that should come off and allow me just to reattach the bumper. Same down here. I'll just move the wheel round so I can get access. And underneath the car, there are, I think, several more bolts, and I have a piece of trim missing, and I do actually have a replacement piece of trim, so I'm going to put that on here whilst I'm at it. So I'm going to give taking the bumper off a go. Right, so I've moved all of these, or removed all of these screws here, and I've taken the little torque screws off here, and actually that gives me, or it should give me, enough access to get that headlight out. And just looking at this bumper, I'm not really sure I'm confident enough to take it off. So it has got some paintwork damage that I want to do, but I can do that in situ, so it's not the end of the world. I'm just a little bit worried about not being able to get it back on again. So I'm going to have a go at changing the headlight. I guess if I can't change it, then I'm going to have to take the bumper off anyway. So let's see how we get on. Now, I think probably first thing to do is to check this new headlight that I have bought off eBay, of course. And if I look at where the mounting points are for it, then, so we've got one down here. I'm not sure it's a mounting, but certainly one there, one at the top, and one in there. So looks like 3 bolts. So we'll give that a go, see if we can get this old one out without removing that bumper, and then put that bumper back together again. I just think that's a safer option. Right, so headlight is out. It was just 3 bolts, and I've managed to manipulate my way around all the space here, which is a little bit tight, but it just seems like it's one connector, and the new headlight has all the bulbs in it already, so I should just be able to take this connector off here and switch out for the new one, and then put it back in, bolt it up, and we should be good. So let's see if I can get the bumper back on and try and fix this bit down here and get it to sit properly. It looks like there's just a little bracket in there with some lugs. None of it looks broken, so I think it might just be seated incorrectly. So we'll see if we can try and tidy that up as well, because we can't really have the bumper. Right, I've managed to manipulate that headlight back in. So I've just managed to push it back in with the bumper still on. So I'm just going to hand tighten all these bolts, and then I'm going to make sure it's all properly fitted before I start doing everything up. And hopefully it all works. I have just tested it, but what an improvement already to the front end of the car, because that headlight is nice and clean and shiny, and the cat's made an appearance as well. So yeah, let's hopefully get all this bolted back together. I'll have a play around with that bumper and then try and get that tidied up. Then we're going to rub the front bit of the bumper down and try and paint that, get that looking a bit more respectable. I've then got some new number plates to go on it as well. There's nothing actually wrong with these, but again, it just affects the appearance of the car. It's all rusty. They're certainly the original plates, which is always a bit of a shame to change them, but I'll put them in the back of the car for the new owner. I very much doubt they'll want them, but at least it's going to look quite respectable. So right, let's get this headlight back on. So this bumper, which was popping out as you saw before, was actually pretty easy, because as you can see in here, there's 3 lugs and they just need to sit on it. And what's happened is it's just popped out, and the only way of getting it back in is to slacken off that bolt so it actually sits over those little lugs. None of them are actually broken, so I think we can do that with a little bit of manipulation. There we go. So I'm just lining it up. In fact, that's on. So if I put that screw back in there, that should just all hold it nicely in place, and then we should be good. These screws have definitely not been out for a very, very long time, because they were very, very hard to get out. I'm just always worried about damaging the threads on them. In fact, I need to turn the wheel the other way. So, right, I'll cut back in when I've done that. Right, so I've turned the wheel, meaning that I should now be able to do this screw up. Let's not lose that screw. I'll just put it on the battery. One for the lower part. And this is just going to be a case of trying to get this to go in and hold that bumper in place. Yeah, that's not working, is it? Okay. Well, I know why, because I haven't actually put it in the right, I've put it randomly. Yeah, okay, that's why, my fault. So that actually wasn't going in where it should. There's another hole there. So that should now go into that hole. And be able to be done up. If I just hold that tight, that should just pull the bumper in and keep it all. Oh, damn it. It's not quite as good as I'd hoped. Well, it's definitely better. I just wonder if it's been popped out for too long and it's lost its shape a bit. Yeah, that's not great, really. Okay. Ah, I see. There's a bit missing off there. That's why it's off. Right, so it isn't quite as simple as I thought. Right, okay. We'll have to have a think about how we're going to do this then. So the bracket isn't actually... Yeah, so what it has is a little lug here. You can see just down there. And that's broken off. So that screw is going in. And it's not actually going into anything. There should be a little lug over here that holds it all together, and that's missing. So it's not really worth putting a new bumper on this car. So we'll just see how we can try and repair that as best we can, so it does hold it in place. I think I can probably get it so it's better, and that might be as good as we can do with it. I'm sure I'm going to get all sorts of grief in the comments for doing this, but I've actually worked out what I think could be a solution. So I can put that screw back in so it will just stay there. It keeps the arch liner in place, which is fine. But what we have on here is like a little ridge. So what I'm going to do is drill a hole in here, probably a few holes, and the same in here. And I'm going to put some cable ties in, because that will actually then serve the same purpose as that screw was serving, in that it will hold that bumper on. So yeah, it's not perfect, but to be honest, it's not going to notice. It will hold the bumper in place. It'll be nice and secure, and that's really what matters. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. After being quite optimistic about the cable tie fix, it's actually not going to be able to do quite what we want. But I think what we'll do is we'll get the rest of the bumper back on, so it's all nice and tight, and then we'll take a look and see what else we can do to try and do an invisible repair, just to try and get it better. I don't think it needs to be perfect, but I'm not quite happy with it as it is now. So yeah, let's get these screws back in and have another go. Right, so whilst I work out what I'm going to do with that bumper, let's do something easy, which is to exchange these number plates. So these should be quite an easy thing to do, unless the screws are rusted, which they're not. So we'll take this front one off. we'll go and drill the new one. We'll get a nice shiny new one on there, and that should really improve the look of the car. All right, we're going to move on to the back number plate. Now this one actually does look quite bad. It's losing its yellow reflectiveness. So we're going to take that out, and we're going to put a nice new one on. Yeah, that's definitely seen better days. So let's go and get that swapped out and get a nice new one on. Right, so we're going to get this nice and straight, and we'll put a couple of small pilot holes in. One there. One there. And then we should be good to get that drilled on. Right, so again, we've got some nice new number plate screws. We're going to pop those on, which is line it up. There we go. That's one. And then we're going to do the other. Now, like a lot of the jobs on this car, do I really need to do this? Probably not. But it's just going to make it look nice. Those number plates, I reckon, are the original dealer ones. So these are plain, they're nice and new. It just makes the car look a little bit nicer. So that's in itself a good enough reason to do it. Put those on. Done. Nice new number plate. Good. Right, so we'll get this one on as well. Nice shiny new number plate. Unfortunately, the little screws I've got with the caps on, because the holes are quite big, they're not going to fit. But we have got some perfectly good enough silver screws, and they look absolutely fine. So that'll do. What I might do, I've got a moment when I go around the car, is I might actually just put a dab of hammerite or something on there, just to make that look as nice as possible. Let's take the cellophane off. There we go, another nice new plate. Looking much, much better. So the underside on this front balance is a little bit scuffed, obviously where it's run over something. I suspect it's probably where they've lost this piece of trim as well. I do have a new one of those, which I want to try and put on later as well. I might get the garage to do that. I just think it'll be much easier when it's up on the ramp. But what I am going to do is just rub this down. I do have some paint. I'm not sure it's an exact match. It's actually some red paint I had for another classic car I had. But given it's so low down, I don't think it's going to notice. But whatever I do here, I think it will be a big improvement. So what we're going to do is just get that rubbed down and sprayed. So I'm going over this with some, I think it's some 500. No, sorry, P150 paper first. Now, it is plastic, so it's reasonably easy to scuff up. Now, I'm not aiming for perfection here because this is all underneath the car anyway. And quite often, these lower parts of cars have stone chip on them, so it's not even it's not an even surface. So we've got that quite smooth. I think what we're going to do is just clean that up with a little bit of thinners, and then we'll put a light dusting of primer on that. And then we're going to go in for some of that red paint, and I think that will look much better. So let's give it a go. Right, that's masked up and it's prepped. I might just do a tiny bit more on that piece there. So before anybody starts telling me I'm doing it wrong, I know it's, like I said, I don't have any experience of doing this. I'm just doing it to the best of my ability, which probably isn't all that great. If it doesn't look any good, well, I'll have to have a rethink. But I think for this, we can probably get this looking reasonable. So I have some primer. It's actually zinc primer. Probably not the best to do plastic with, but let's just give it a go. See how we get on. tiny dusting. We're going to wait for that to dry, and then we'll come back to it probably in about 15 minutes. I think what I might do now is go around the car with some of this red paint and a tiny brush, and I might just touch in some of the stone chips all around the car, because I think that will just really freshen it up. It's not too bad. I have actually had the bumper resprayed. I'll just take you for a walk on the car. There's various things, like, as I said on the original video, some scratches on the door, just here, as you can see, which need really, they're not too bad, but I just think it freshens it up. It looks nice. We want this car to look smart. It's not going to be showroom fresh. It's quite old, but the back bumper has been resprayed. So I had that taken off and sprayed because that was the worst, and that actually looks really nice. We've done a really good job of that. But there's just a few bits and pieces all over it, tiny little scratches or chips. And I think that a touch-in pen delicately with a little brush, we can get this looking really quite nice. And I think when we've done all of this with the paint, I think it's virtually ready. So it's just then the clean. And of course the big day is coming up this week, because it's MOT time, and we'll see how we get on with the MOT. So I'm hoping it's going to go through, but again, whatever it needs, it's going to have to be done. So let's see. Either way, it's going to eat into my profit if I don't, if indeed there's going to be any left, but let's see. Right, so whilst that front bumper's drying, there's some scratches. The worst ones are here, and these are, you can put your fingernail in them, they're pretty deep. So what I've done is a little bit of paint I've sprayed in here. This is actually an artist's brush, so it's really fine. And I'm just going to very, very gently dab in those little scratches. I'm probably going to need a couple of coats. As I keep saying, I'm not striving for perfection with this. I just want to take the eye off it. And this isn't a perfect colour match. This is flame red paint, which is for a 1975 MG, not the red that this car is. But already, I think that looks 1,000 times better. Is that a scratch or? Yeah, it is. So there we go. You can just about see what I'm doing. Well, hopefully you can't see too much of it, because that is the general idea. So we're going to go around the whole car. I'm not going to film me doing all of this, but effectively I'm going to go around, little tiny brush like this with my little pot of paint, and we're going to do any little chips and scratches that we see around the car. Right, I've been around all of the car and done the stone chips. Now the bonnet is always going to be probably one of the worst places. This has got literally hundreds, probably thousands of tiny stone chips, but in many ways I think that's good, because it's telling me the car's not actually been resprayed or had an accident. So what I will do on this, I'm not going to do all of them because it will just look awful if I do. I'm just going to do the worst ones. So there's some bigger ones down here by the headlights. I'm just going to touch those in. You can get into touching them in, then flattening them down and with paper and polishing, but again, just not sure of my ability to do that. As I'll keep coming back to every time, this is an 11-year-old car, so people have got to be realistic. I want it to be really good, but it's not going to be perfect. If it was, it wouldn't be the price I'm going to be selling it for. So I think this looks pretty good. Some bigger ones down here. This paint appears to be quite a good match. I don't know how many different shades of red there are. Some are more orangey or pinky than others, but this one seems to be a fairly sort of red, which is a very stupid thing to say, I guess. But anyway, there's a couple on the wing mirror. I'll just do those. And my barometer, as I'll keep coming back to, is that I want this to be a car that, do you know what, I'd be okay to drive. It looks decent, it looks respectable, and that's my barometer. So it will only be sold when it's at a point where I can say, you know what, I would happily drive around with this. I think it's safe enough to have my children in. That's the point for me, that it's good enough. So I think we're done with that. We'll go around and give it a second coat, then we'll come back to that front bumper. Right, so that primer has dried. It actually feels quite good, nice and smooth. There's no bubbles or anything in it. So what we're going to do is give it a nice coating of this red. First of all, a dust coat. So we'll do that, and then we'll let that dry for, again, a few minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll build up a few more coats on it as well. So let's see what the paint match is like. But I mean, either way, it should look a hell of a lot better, because it won't have the scuff on. So even if it's not a perfect match, it's not really going to notice because it's the lower part of the car. I wouldn't be doing this myself on any other parts of the car, which is why I had the back bumper resprayed properly by somebody who knows what they're doing. But for this bit, I think it'll be absolutely fine. And when this is done, we'll get that lower part of the valance put on. So we need to go underneath the car and try and do that. And I think really at that point it's done. So hopefully we can get an MOT. Right, so this has had now probably 3 coats of paint. And I think you'll agree that that looks much better. So again, I'm not suggesting it's perfect, but the paint match is pretty good, to be perfectly honest. And not just that, it's just not going to notice down here. So all the bits underneath here which were scuffed, I've also just sprayed those. I'll put that new trim on as well. So the front end now still needs a clean, of course, but it just looks much tidier, no scuffs. And all the little marks that were on the car. So again, this, just see it, again, it's not perfect. It's just definitely taken your eye off it though. So I might just go over those again with one more coat. But the car now is really quite good. Just needs to be cleaned. The back is all good because the bumper's been resprayed. A few little bits here and there. So again, I've done a few bits in here. Not what you do on a new car, but I think for an 11-year-old car, this is fine. Little bits over here. I've done one as well. Just about make that out. And the front end, it just looks tidy. Looks very tidy and respectable, and that's exactly what I wanted. So I'm pretty happy with that. And I'll keep coming back to what I say, which is, would I be okay driving around in this car? And the answer is yes. So part 3 of the video now complete. This is taking a little longer than I thought to actually get this car ready for sale. We've done quite a few other jobs today. Next thing to do is to give the car a proper clean and get it prepared for its MOT. So it is due in for its MOT, as I've said previously. So in the next video, which will come very, very shortly, we will be doing the full clean on the car. I'll show you the end result of what that looks like. We'll be getting the MOT, hopefully, on the car as well. And then hopefully we'll be in a position to start getting it marketed and to get the car sold. And we're going to find out whether or not I'm going to make a profit.